ikuti program Camera, catatan Menko Airlangga.
But at the same time, and this brings me to part 2 of my remarks, this contest is also driven by mistakes that have been made by both sides. And I'll talk about the mistakes. And in the case of China, the big mistake that China made, and this is why I devote a chapter of my book to discussing this mistake, and this is that China has alienated American businessmen and the American business community. And why is that important? Because in the past, whenever there were problems between the United States and China in the 1980s, 1990s, even 2000s, whenever the United States wanted to apply pressure on China, the US business community would say, stop, you're damaging my business. Be careful, right? So that was a way of making sure that the US would never apply too much pressure on China. But unfortunately, the Chinese officials, for whatever reason, became arrogant, maybe after the global financial crisis of 2007, 2008, and then they decided that they didn't need the American business community. And if you want to find out what the American business community was unhappy about, you can read it openly in open sources. If you look at the website of the US Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, the website of the US Chamber of Commerce in Beijing, they complain about the fact that they have to share their technology, they lose intellectual property, that there's no level playing field in the competition between Chinese and American companies. This is all open information. But you also find it in my book. And by the way, I want to mention, just as an aside, the good news that my book has China One will be published soon in Bahasa Indonesia. It should be coming out in a few months' time, and I'll let you know when it comes out, so you can read it in Bahasa Indonesia also. But anyway, when the book comes to Indonesia, please read chapter 2, and you will see the mistakes that were made by the Chinese side in alienating American businessmen. And of course, we can discuss later whether or not these mistakes can be rectified. But at the same time, the United States has also made a mistake in managing China. But the United States mistake is a much more serious one. And it's like a big mistake because the United States has basically launched this contest against China without first working out a comprehensive long-term strategy. Now, you may think this is not possible. United States has got the best strategic think tanks, the best universities, the best known strategic thinkers. Surely United States wouldn't do this, wouldn't launch a contest against China without having a strategy. But I can say this with some confidence because the source for my claim that the United States doesn't have a strategy is one of America's best known strategic thinkers, and his name is Henry Kissinger. And I can tell you that when I was doing research for my book, Has China Won? I went to New York and I had a one-on-one lunch with Henry Kissinger. And at that lunch, he told me, the message he gave to me was that the United States doesn't have a strategy for managing the rise of China. And of course, this is also confirmed subsequently by events and developments, right? For example, if you, this is what I've written about in an article published in the National Interest in the year 2021. The way to confirm that the United States doesn't have a strategy is to ask yourself a simple question. What are the objectives of the American how do you say, geopolitical contest that it has launched against China. And if you try to ask an American policymaker, what are your objectives? What are you trying to achieve? You cannot get a straight answer, right? So, for example, I give you some hypothetical objectives. One is the United States trying to overthrow the Chinese Communist Party in the way that it actually succeeded in overthrowing the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, right? And if that's the objective, it cannot be done because the Chinese Communist Party remains very, very popular in China. And I can tell you that there's a Harvard Kennedy School objective academic peer-reviewed study that showed that in the last 2 decades, support for the Chinese Communist Party has gone up from 86% to 93%, right? And that's not surprising because the Chinese people have enjoyed the greatest improvement in their standard of living in the past 30, 40 years. In fact, they've had the best improvement in their standard of living in 30 years over a 3,000-year history. So if the Chinese people are so much better off under the Chinese Communist Party rule, why would they want to overthrow the Chinese Communist Party? So clearly that cannot be the objective. So you can see all these objectives are not feasible. So the question therefore is, what is the United States trying to achieve in launching this geopolitical contest? And without clear objectives, that's clearly a geopolitical mistake that has been made by the United States. So you can see the mistakes made by China and the mistakes made by United States.
Ikuti program Camera, catatan Menko Airlangga.